especially when this young lady's been missing for a week. That is just not good, because the longer that stretches out, as we see time and time again, it becomes a recovery and not a rescue.
A young mother of 3 disappears without a trace, only leaving behind a chilling text message.
I would think that's kind of an anomaly.
And now, human remains and a burning car found in the same county that the woman went missing.
Certainly, it's going to be somebody's going to get some bad news in one way or the other if you've got a body in a burned up car. So that's not good, no matter how you cut it.
This is 25-year-old mother of 3, Megan Bodiford. She was last seen on April 24th in the rural city of Denmark, South Carolina, about an hour south of Columbia. Megan's friend reported her missing after receiving a strange text from Megan's phone. The message read, quote, "If you don't hear from me in 30 minutes, he killed me. He has a gun." She hasn't been heard from since, and the phone was turned off after the message was sent. Friends say they believe Megan was referring to her boyfriend in the text, but he has not been named publicly by investigators, so we won't name him either. All we know from investigators is that Megan was reported missing and endangered. I asked former homicide detective Phil Waters what that could mean.
It depends on the circumstances under which the missing person report was filed. So if there was some indication that it was more than someone presumably getting up and just walking and getting in a car and leaving on their own, if there was some sort of struggle that was observed because there was stuff knocked over or whatever, or there may have been something, as dramatic as blood transfer, that kind of thing, blood spatter. There may be some indications there that it's not just someone who has chosen to be missing, but that they may have left by force and therefore they're considered to be endangered.
But it's really Megan's last text that makes the case stand out. And the friend received kind of a creepy text that said, "If you don't hear from me in 30 minutes, he killed me, he has a gun," meaning Megan's boyfriend. What do you make of that text?
Well, that's pretty specific. So that would, in homicide, we would call that a clue, right? So that would be something that authorities are going to take. And the source of that text, find out who she's talking about. And if she's talking about her boyfriend, in fact, then there's going to have to be an effort made to find her, and hopefully in time that nothing has happened to her. That's awful strange. Does that mean that she's with him and she sent the text somehow, or she's with him and he sent the text for some weird reason? So that is very odd text.
Do clues like this pop up often? It seems pretty blatant.
Well, to say do they pop up often, you're talking about in the terms of a text message being received, that kind of a thing. I wouldn't say often. No, I would think that's kind of an anomaly. That's a very strange. She's missing.
Even if he hasn't been named publicly, we know investigators probably gravitated toward Megan's boyfriend right away. Investigators, at least what I'm aware of, usually go to the significant other right away if somebody's missing or if there's a murder. So do you think that they would be following up with this guy right away?
Oh, I think so. I think once it's known to them vis-a-vis this reported missing person with the text thing and all that stuff, that you start on the inside out, start on the inner circle and work your way out. So I'm sure, especially given the nature of that text message, I'm sure he's the first one they're going to snatch up and have a conversation with.
And there's a logical reason why his name hasn't been listed.
I would imagine that they're keeping things pretty close to the vest because there are a lot of things that they know that the public does not need to know. at this point in time. So they're not going to compromise their investigation just to satisfy media people and people that want to be nosy.
Early on, Phil says investigators probably used a variety of tactics in their search for Megan.
I'm sure they're doing. I would think especially if it's a rural area, if they have the capabilities for some port of an air unit of some kind, of Fox unit, helicopters, that kind of thing, uh, utilizing those as well. So you're going to have people on the ground, of course. They may have used tracking dogs. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do in a search. It's just going to kind of depend on where they started from and how far out they needed to go.
This is a Law&Crime legal alert and a Law&Crime YouTube takeover. Google Incognito tracked users' browsing data without their knowledge. Mass Tort Alliance, one of our legal sponsors, is helping users file for compensation due to Google misleading the privacy of their incognito browser. If you've used Google Incognito anytime since 2016, you can start your claim in less than 10 questions at incognitoclaims.com/LC takeover. And we've talked about this mysterious text that was sent from her phone right before she went missing. But would investigators also look at her other data, past texts, calls, who she was discussing things with, and what sort of topics were on her mind?
Well, sure, and they'll get the. I'm sure one of the first things they would do would be ping that phone to find out where it was when that text message was sent, or where it was when it was turned off, or quit transmitting anything. So that phone is going to be valuable in pinpointing times of events.
The timeline continues to April 30th, when a burned vehicle with human remains is discovered in Bamberg County, the same county where Megan went missing. So far, the remains have not been publicly identified, but the case has been handed over to the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, or SLED.
So the gal's been missing a week, and that's a lot of time for a lot of bad stuff to happen. So now that they have found a body in the car, if we presume it is her, I mean, it certainly is a possibility that she's been alive up until today. I mean, there's certainly a possibility. So once they start sifting through it, talk to this boyfriend, start getting trying to put some of these puzzle pieces together, that gives them at least a partial picture of what may have happened to this young lady. They're moving through it methodically, and it sounds to me like they know something. They've got some pretty good information, and of course, it sounds like that's perhaps going to be this missing person. And if it's not, I mean, it's going to be somebody's going to get some bad news in one way or the other if you've got a body in a burned up car. So that's not good, no matter how you cut it. I don't believe in coincidence, so that doesn't, for me, that narrows it down, that you've probably got the missing person found. It's a recovery.
And I know you mentioned they're likely keeping things close to the vest, not to compromise the integrity of this investigation. But we do know that investigators are now looking at the remains to determine who it is. How long do you think it would take for them to come forward and say, yes, this is our victim, or no, this is somebody else in an unrelated case?
Well, it will depend on what the body's state is in. If they have features that they can identify, if she has tattoos, that kind of thing, and of course they can go to dental records, then the DNA, of course, that kind of thing.
In the end, Phil says all roads lead back to that eerie text message sent from Megan's phone.
I'm just surprised that the weird text message is kind of, that should have been. Of course, we don't know how quick authorities were to go up on that phone, make those things happen as quickly as possible, given the nature of the text. And again, the possibility is that she made the text, she got caught, he destroys the phone, turns the phone off, chunks the phone, in BFE somewhere and throws them off the trail, at least on the as far as the phone's concerned. So a lot of things I'm thinking in my head that I'd be doing, and I'm sure SLED is doing. And they're going to be, if that doesn't work, you hit a wall, then you move to the next thing and get going. So, but it doesn't sound too hopeful at this point.
What do you think the outcome will be here? That it's likely these remains that were just discovered belong to Megan?
Well, I would say just Sarah, just based on what we've talked about and the evidence that we have right now, that seems to be the strongest possibility that the evidence is leading to her recovery of the body. I mean, I've worked missing. The case started out as a missing person case. And then where I worked, we have a missing persons division that does just that. And then when it starts to tilt toward something much more serious than just a missing person, then we in homicide would be brought in to that investigation. And more times than not, um, it does not have a good outcome. It just does not, especially when this young lady's been missing for a week. That is just not good, because the longer that stretches out, as we see time and time again, it becomes a recovery and not a rescue.
To be clear, the remains found in Bamberg County have not yet been identified. If you have any information about Megan's whereabouts, contact the Bamberg County Sheriff's Office. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Gillespie.